Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week I'm going to take a look at this painting that you can see on screen. This, of course, a painting by Vincent van Gogh, usually referred to as Starry Night. I don't know if Vincent called it Starry Night or if that's a name that was given to it later on. But anyway, it's usually Starry Night. I'm just going to go through a few ideas, things that I've learned from looking at paintings like this one, and just sharing those ideas. It might be useful or interesting to someone. So we know quite a bit about this painting, not just the paint that he used, the canvas and things, but also a lot of the information around the painting. We know these things because Vincent wrote many letters to his brother Theo. Theo was living in Paris, was part of the art world in Paris, and then Vincent was living in the south of France. And he often mentioned the paintings that he was working on, his feelings, thoughts about the paintings, struggles he was having, solutions, and so on. So as I said, we know a lot about the painting. Some of the information we know was painted in 1889. Vincent died in 1890, so this wasn't his last painting. He's a very prolific painter. He was still painting even in the last year of his life. But it is certainly one of his later paintings, one of his last paintings, if you like. So some of the things we know that at that time he was living in an asylum, a hospital. He was having lots of problems with both physical and mental health. You can see a picture of the hospital in the top left. It still exists. The building is still there. It started out as a monastery. And at some point, I don't know when or why, the monks moved out and it became a hospital, a psychiatric hospital. So as I say, Vincent was having problems with his mental health. He voluntarily entered this asylum to seek some treatment. His physical health wasn't good either, in part because of his diet and his lifestyle. He was a heavy smoker, drinker, and he seems to have lived on a diet of mostly coffee and bread. It wasn't a healthy lifestyle. Maybe this is connected to his mental health. Maybe the two of them, the bad physical health and mental health, are playing off each other. I don't know. He was in need of some treatment anyway. As I said, the building still exists. It's still there. It might be possible to get onto a tour of the building. I know that they used to do them limited tours of the building, and they used to show the room or the couple of rooms that Vincent used. I don't know if that's still possible. On the right, you can see an example of the type of room where he might have stayed. When Vincent entered the hospital, it wasn't full. It was only about half full. And the doctor who ran the hospital gave him 2 rooms. The doctor was quite progressive, especially for that time period. So he wanted Vincent to bring his art materials and to continue working on his art while he was in the hospital. So he gave Vincent 2 rooms, one to use as a bedroom and then one to use as a studio. So we actually know not just the building where he painted Starry Night, but we know which room he used. Apparently, they know which room it was. So therefore, they know what Vincent could see out of the window of that room that he was using as a studio. If you go back to the painting, there's a few things we can say. One of the first things is that Vincent has kind of made up this scene. This is not a real scene as such. Yes, there were hills visible from the asylum. There was a little village, a little town. There were cypress trees. All of these things are real. They were observed by Vincent, but they weren't all together in one view. He's manufactured that. He's created that. And this is the first point I want to make. And maybe it's an obvious point to some people, but but I'm not sure it is to everybody. And it's the idea that it is okay to do that. As an artist, you're not just a camera, you're not just a copy machine, you're not just reproducing exactly what you see. If that's what you want to do, that's great, go for it. But you don't have to do it that way. I say it sounds obvious, but in my experience, I think some people, when they're getting started in art, they maybe have in their idea that you have to paint what you see. That's the whole point of art. So the point I'm just trying to make is, well, no, you don't. You can make things up. So we know that the hills were in a different place from the village and the town. The little town itself, you can see there's a church in the middle of the town or village that has a very elongated, pointy steeple. Again, we know that the actual church in the town near the asylum didn't have that kind of steeple. In fact, this sort of steeple, this sort of church architecture is not common in this part of France. However, it is more common in Vincent's homeland, his home country of the Netherlands. So he's probably using a bit of memory from childhood when he was growing up in the Netherlands. So to sum up, what I'm trying to say is that using imagination, memory, readjusting things, moving things around, it's all okay to do these things. From a compositional point of view as the artist, you can do that. You can add things, remove things, invent things. It's all up to you. It's not a naturalistic approach to painting. So the naturalistic approach is more paint what you see, exactly what you see. No embellishments, no changes. You're not trying to elevate anything or decrease anything. You're just painting what you see. And that's one way of approaching art, usually referred to as the naturalistic way of doing art. This is not a naturalistic painting. It's not just simply reproducing reality. In fact, when you look at the sky never actually looks like that. Vincent has given us an artistic interpretation of the night sky. Another thing maybe point out with the painting is the color scheme. So it's kind of an analogous color scheme. So what I mean is, if you think of the color wheel, you've got your red, yellow, blue primary colors, and then in between those, the secondary. So yellow plus red gives you orange, blue plus yellow gives green, and so on. Analogous color schemes are when you have 2 or 3 colors that are on the same side of the color wheel. So for example, blues, yellows, and greens. And those are, I would argue, the dominant colors in this painting. They're not the only colors, but there's a lot of blue, a lot of yellow, touches of green here and there, especially in the cypress tree. So that's one way of looking at it, is this color scheme, this analogous color scheme, as opposed to a complementary color scheme where you have colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. Red and green, for example, would be complementary colors. The complementary colors kind of clash. They don't sit quietly next to each other, like siblings that are constantly fighting in the backseat of the car. They just always at each other's throat. The analogous color scheme is different. They're more relaxed, more quiet. They just sit there together peacefully. So the color scheme that you choose, it's not that one is right and one is wrong. It's just they create different atmospheres, different feelings. They can evoke different emotions in the viewer. Again, this is different from the naturalistic approach. The naturalistic approach is to paint the colors that you can see in nature. You're not making things up. You're not using color in a non-representational or any sort of artistic way. You're just simply reproducing the greens, the blues, whatever it is that you can see in real life. As I say, this is not a naturalistic painting, so Vincent is using colour, I would suggest, in a more artistic way, to create an atmosphere, a mood, maybe to evoke some sort of emotional response from the viewer. It's one way of using colour. It was a way of using colour that became more popular during this time period, this sort of late 19th century, the post-Impressionist period, it's usually referred to, when artists like Gogh and Van Gogh and others were using colour in a more artistic way. So that's another point that I wanted to make. Again, you can use colour in whatever way that you want to. You don't have to just stick to the naturalistic representational approach to using colour. You can use colour in whatever way you think is appropriate. One other thing about this whole idea of naturalism versus more artistic approach to art is, and again the use of colour, is the way some people have interpreted Van Gogh's use of yellow. So in this painting there's a lot of yellow, and it's very bright, very vivid. Some of it's sort of orangey yellow. It is quite dominant and quite noticeable. Some people have said that his use of this bright yellow was an obvious indication of his mental instability, his insanity. And some people have even said that he had brain damage resulting from ingesting or accidentally ingesting the lead that was in some of the paint that he used. So why did they reach this conclusion? Well, it's because he's using colour in a non-natural way, in a way that is not naturalistic. And they assume, therefore, that this was the result of madness or brain damage. Some people, I know it's crazy and it seems bizarre, but some people do have this approach to art, that if the art isn't naturalistic, if it doesn't look natural, it is somehow deviant and wrong and is an indication of an underlying health problem or something. To me, it's a bizarre way of looking at art, but it's out there. You get onto the internet and you will see all of these theories about how Vincent used colour and how it was an indication of his mental health problems. If you choose to do non-naturalistic art, whether it's abstract art or representational art like this, but using colour, for example, in a non-representational way, you will get some people attacking your art. That's what happens. There are some people who want you to knuckle under, to obey the rules and to do what they think you should be doing in art. My advice, what I try to do is just do my own thing and not really care or worried about what those people say or think. They have a certain way of looking at life and the world. That's their thing. I just want to be able to do my own thing. And I think that's what Vincent did. He painted the way he wanted to paint. So that would be the last thing that I wanted to say about this painting. It's a great example of an artist who was doing his own thing. Wasn't too worried about whether people liked it or didn't like it. He had this vision in his head and he was trying to implement that vision. And I think that's the right way to make art. Now, if your vision is a naturalistic one, that's great, go for it, do your own thing. But for those of us who don't have that sort of naturalistic approach to art, do your own thing still. Don't be worried about whether other people attack you. I definitely think there's a lot we can learn from looking at other artists and art movements. Art history is fascinating and it has a lot to teach us, even in the 21st century. The problems that they were trying to solve, the issues they were looking at, it's the same sort of thing still today. So we can learn from their solutions and their way of approaching things. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching and listening, and hopefully see you again in 2 weeks' time.